Got to talk about the situation in Kerry. So Peter Keane is still in the running for the job. He's been asked to essentially, come back and try and get another term that wouldn't just be 1 year on it. Jack O'Connor is the official bookies' favourite. And Seamus Moynihan has emerged as another potential candidate. And to add a level of intrigue with all this, it's the existing management team and it looks like a fairly similar backroom setup. It's Jack O'Connor and the name Declan O'Sullivan is being appended to that, so Jack would bring Declan O'Sullivan along and then there would be a succession plan in place. So it's kind of it seems like it's the type of thing that a well-run county would do. Jack O'Connor was very recently, the under-20s manager, and if he hadn't gone off to manage Kildare, it might look like Kerry County Board had this plan in place the whole way through. And then Seamus Moynihan is very intriguing because obviously he's one of the greatest players ever to play the game, and maybe his reputation would be even higher if they hadn't forced him to play full-back for the best peak years of his career when he was a makeshift full-back Maria and ended up being still the classiest footballer on the pitch almost every single time he played. But there's a suggestion that he might be able to bring Donny Buckley back as part of the backroom team, and Donny Buckley's coaching talent has begun to reach the mythic proportions of Wes Hoolahan and Andy Reid when he wasn't there. In absentia, the reputation grows and grows and grows and grows. And look, I'm being mildly facetious there because it's clear he is an outstanding coach that seems to have the respect of absolutely everybody. And the Kerry County Board in the past have loved him so much that they kind of insisted that he was part of the backroom team with Peter Keane, and then obviously that didn't work out and he ended up with Banty, and we saw how close Moynihan were to ultimately maybe winning an All-Ireland this year, Shane. I don't know. So this level of intrigue about Kerry football is going to keep us pretty entertained for the next while. There's a few other points about this, right? The selection committee, as announced yesterday, is constituted. The person in charge is the chairman of the county board, obviously, but as far as I know, his term is coming to an end. So he's going to be centrally involved in making this decision, but it'll be the new chairman and the new county board constituted who will actually end up living with the decision, which I'm not sure. Maybe you want everybody aligned. Maybe it doesn't really matter. Maybe the next chairperson of that county board will automatically have a say or a viewpoint or just row in behind it. And then also, as far as I know, one of the potential candidates, the three candidates that I've named, has had one of the selectors of the new role as a selector in their backroom team in the past, which you would think would be a bit of a barrier to being involved in the selection of the role now. So certainly in Kerry, there is an assumption that the factions already have support within the group that is making the decision. So it's
this is so Kerry, isn't it? Like it's just the fact that there's so much made over the appointment of the manager is no surprise. But the fact that they've even appointed this subcommittee would suggest Peter Keane isn't the only person being considered. But I would imagine, given that it seems Keane is still interested in staying on and the support is there for him, I just expect in another week or 10 days it's going to be confirmed that Peter Keane is staying on as Kerry manager. I know this is the last words he said of his term, but I would not be surprised if he's still at the helm next year.
Last week I wouldn't have been surprised at all. I thought that I actually thought that the victory was a good result. That look how close we are. We're getting there. We've seen these guys up close. We drew with them, which Jack O'Connor didn't manage to do at his time as Kerry manager. Would have been my argument. I was on the Peter Keane camp, and I don't know. Now I think that the emergence of Moynihan, and if the reports about Donny Buckley being potentially part of that backroom team, that's very compelling. It's kind of a clean, new, but also old group.
Well, from a neutral's point of view, like the next couple of weeks are just going to be so interesting. It's a real shame that Owen Sheehan has taken his holidays, or maybe he's taken them at the right time and he's down stirring the pot, and suddenly he's going to emerge in a high-powered PRO job under which side will he align to? But if Peter Keane wants to stay on, and Jack O'Connor, it seems, is very clear that he wants the job, does this become public? Does this become? Do we need to get Seamus Moynihan, Peter Keane, and Jack O'Connor on the show together and make them present their case as to why they should lead the finest generation of Kerry players for the next 3 years? Should they come forth with their backroom teams? Is there interviews taking place? Is there any sort of a public element to this? Are they all on terrace talk some night and there's a back and forth as to why I deserve it? And as you say, well, Jack O'Connor had his chance, but Tyrone are coming back and they're a force. And we know that Jack, when it comes to Tyrone, there is kryptonite. So do we really want him there? Is that how Peter Keane has to go about this? Or is it all sort of cute horror politics in the background?
I don't know, but it's pretty intriguing, isn't it? I think the fact that Jack O'Connor has Declan Sullivan in his backroom team, or allegedly, that's the again the reports, like that looks like it would be an off the shelf. We planned this all along. Look what the experience that Declan has had with the under 20s, and he's clearly a brilliant football mind. It seems like as a coach he is as plugged into the game as he was as a player. So there's actually, if any of those three solutions were to come off, you'd have to say that Kerry football is in a pretty good place. And actually, the process of making everybody go through this is acceptable. It's just that the terseness of the statement and the fact that they didn't even thank the previous outgoing manager for what he'd done for the previous 3 years, that stank to me, I have to say. So it feels like...
Is there a way of bringing them all together? Like, is that wishful thinking that somehow at the end of this Kerry football is united? Because that's a pretty frightening prospect if you have, as you say, a succession plan. But you're talking about big personalities in Kerry, and there's so many more of them coming through quickly in coaching, where we've Tomas O'Shea now gone coaching. We know Kieran Donaghy is there, Mike Quirk is there. Any amount of younger players who are going to come and bring a fresh thinking to this, that like, does this get down and dirty pretty quickly? Because it is the immediate future. You are the guy who's going to be over David Clifford for the next 3 years. That is a very attractive proposition, that if you're Seamus Moynihan, I'm going to do everything in my power to get that gig. If you're Declan O'Sullivan and you're Jack O'Connor, I'm going to do everything in my power to get that gig. Like, where does this go? Or is it just there's 5 men on that shortlist who make the decision and they keep it quiet and the press release released next week and that's it, done and Peter Keane's back?
Yeah, like you want to Mick McCarthy, Stephen Kenny kind of succession plan in Kerry. Like this is the time to become Kerry manager. I think it's a pressure position at the best of times, but I think the defeat to Tyrone almost takes away a little bit of the pressure next season, because this is a Kerry squad, as you said, like they're going to win the All-Ireland in the next 3 or 4 years.
Are they?
Whoever takes over.
You just can't say that anymore.
Is that not the problem for Kerry? They've spent the last 3 years saying this Kerry team are going to do this, that, and the other, and they haven't done any of it.
And they're still young. Look, they're still young. These players probably have learned a little bit from the Tyrone game. I mean, nobody really saw that Tyrone win coming. Maybe they were a bit naive heading into that match. They probably didn't play like they could have played. But Peter Keane, I think, one more year. Give Peter Keane one more year. See what he can do with this Kerry team. You might say he's had 3 and he still hasn't won the All-Ireland with them, but
you just want to keep Donny Buckley up in Monaghan.
Well, I was going to say I've spouted lovely things about Donny Buckley on this show in the past, and by and all, the word from inside the Monaghan camp is that he is absolutely adored, and the players love him, understandably so. But he lives in Clare. I assume he's going to stay on with Monaghan next year if this Kerry thing doesn't materialise. But you want to hold on to someone like that, of course you do. But if you're Kerry, I can see why you'd want him. But no, I really shouldn't be saying positive things about Donny in case that anyone on that management subcommittee is listening. No, he's brutal. He's a terrible coach. I think he should stay at Monaghan. I
think Nathan, your question: is there any way that you could like put them all together? It doesn't work. Like, everybody needs to have their own backroom teams, and we've seen that with Peter Keane and Donny Buckley. Like, that was an arranged marriage. They went off to where is it in Clare where the matchmaking thing happens?
Lisdoonvarna.
It didn't work, and he's ended up going off and spreading the gospel of Kerry football elsewhere. So unfortunately that is not the case. Can we briefly talk about golf, because we're gone way over time here, and Daniel Harris is standing by. Matthew Said is writing today in the London Times about how